Welcome to my workbench. 13 years later, I'm going to show you how I typically use the bench, which features I like, and which aspects I would change. So let's jump in. Firstly, let's talk about using hand planes. The tail vise has been great at clamping all sorts of shapes and sizes for face planing. Smaller pieces like this you can do on edge, but when they get larger, the shoulder vise, and in particular the leg vise, work very well. Once a piece of wood is milled and ready for layout and then joinery, all three vises have their place. Cutting tenons on something like this really works well in all three. When it comes to working more perpendicular to the piece, the leg vise and shoulder vise each have their pros and cons. On a fairly narrow piece, both vises work well. But with the piece a little bit wider, you're going to want to support it more to keep it from flexing. The shoulder vise is much better at this without needing further support. Now try to clamp this wider piece of lumber in the shoulder vise, and I have no built-in means to support this side. Whereas with the leg vise, having the sliding dead man here allows me to support this side on much wider pieces. Clamping small pieces is effective with both the leg vise and jaws of the tail vise. It's not so effective with the shoulder vise. Because the shoulder vise has a pivot point, there can be movement if the workpiece doesn't pass behind it. I typically keep my work stool under my tail vise where it is both out of the way and easily available to sit on or support lumber. Also, when used backwards, the tail vise and bench jogs work great at pulling apart old joinery on furniture when doing repairs. The space between the tail vise jaws and within the shoulder vise have been convenient places to drill through holes or use a jigsaw while keeping the workpiece supported on either side of the cut. Another interesting consideration is the dead space here created by the shoulder vise. There is a decent portion in front of the bench here that's a little awkward to walk around and isn't really a part of the useful square footage of the workbench. It also takes up a bit of length to the overall capacity of lumber that can be clamped on edge here, whereas the leg vise really excels at clamping long pieces edgewise. So if you have a small space, that may be a setback. Having hold fast has been a big improvement to the ways in which I can hold parts on the bench. Having the split top also adds some flexibility to ways I can clamp. Along with the space, I can put tools that like to roll around. One of the biggest considerations when designing furniture is wood movement. Designing a workbench is no different. If the bench is in a climate-controlled environment, then you can get away with more, but if it's exposed to humidity and temperature changes like mine is, then it really can't be overlooked. I designed this bench with a split top in hybrid style trestle base specifically so that the bench could handle seasonal changes. During the first couple years after finishing the bench, I re-flattened the top with a plane once or twice because of some minor expansion, contraction, warpage. But since then, I haven't had the need, or maybe more accurately, I haven't bothered checking. I typically don't use this bench as a flat surface reference, and having the bench ever so slightly twisted, cupped, or uneven doesn't affect its usability. The leather on the faces of the vises and bench jogs has all held up well. I have noticed a few minor cracks along some glue joints, the most notable being by the jaws of the tail vise here. It could have been the quality of the glue up that was compromised, or the holes here in the tail vise cradle that didn't allow for enough movement. The biggest issue I have had with construction related to wood movement is the amount of slack or tolerance between the tail vise components and the fit of the leg vise screw in its nut. You may have noticed me put a little extra effort into turning the screw, and that's because when I first made this screw a nut, they had a perfect fit. Now this time of year with the below freezing temperatures, the screw is very tight. Same with the tail vise here. The fit of the screw isn't too bad, but the cradle is tighter than ideal. The tail vise is easy enough to adjust after the bench is complete, but just note that when making wooden nuts and screws, to allow for some wiggle room between the two, because it's much more difficult to adjust their sizes after you have removed the tap or screw jig from the piece. One thing I like to do every couple of years or so is reapply a penetrating oil to the bench top and sides. I just scrape off any dried wood glue and apply the oil as instructed. The reason I like to do this is to keep any dripping wood glue from adhering to the bench top in the first place and any water from absorbing in. I prefer an oil penetrating finish like this rather than a film finish because it's easy to maintain in this way. I have still considered using a toothing blade to rough up the surface of the bench top to provide even more grip between the work pieces and the surface of the bench. When I first built the bench, I left the space within the legs open, but I found the desire to put tools there was greater than any benefit I got from the space being vacant. So I added the shelf where I keep my workbench appliances, quick clamps, mallet, dust brush, and sometimes parts and tools that I'm using on a project. If I had more space, I would definitely make the bench longer. I would potentially design the base here so that this leg was flush to the bench top like it is on the other side. Then I could use holdfasts in it or have a sliding dead man here to support pieces. But honestly, because I have that on the other side of the bench, it really isn't an issue. The height has been good for me at 30¼ inches as a 5'4" guy. And I wouldn't make the bench any wider either, as there isn't ever really a need for it, and it only makes it further to reach if you do place it against a wall. The hard maple has held up great, and I do like it being a hardwood because I can throw undressed lumber and power tools on the bench and not worry so much about denting it. If the cost of hardwood like this is an issue or accessibility, I would consider using poplar as an alternative. You can get it in very thick pieces and it's a little bit more cost effective. The only downside is it will be a bit softer, so you won't have the same durability when you're a little bit more rough with it. I will be releasing plans for my workbench alongside another video going over more specific details regarding its construction. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer in the form of a reply or content within the next video. Thanks for watching, and if you remember seeing my original videos about my workbench years ago, I would love to hear from you.